So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to TMF Week 2025. I'm very excited to be here again for another year of TMF Week. This year we've got a great lineup for you. We've also got a lot of people registered, so around 1,250 people registered. So that's quite a sizable number. I'm hoping that most of you are able to make the various different sessions. Yesterday we had a kickoff with a career day for TMF newcomers, which was great. We had some experts who were sort of giving advice in terms of careers, and then also just sort of one-on-one type sessions. Over the next 4 days, so the remaining 4 days of TMF Week, we've got around 35 speakers for you from all different areas of the industry who are going to be sharing their knowledge on everything TMF. Today we're really focusing a lot on standards, and that's a pretty big topic right now within the TMF world. And we're lucky to have Dave Iverson-Hurst and Nick Hargarden with us today, who will be kicking things off to talk on digital data flow and how this would impact TMF. I'm then going to be giving a presentation on the vision and roadmap for CDISC, TMF Reference Model moving forward. And then we have some great people from clinical science, so Matt and Aaron, who I'm sure that some of you have already come across. And they will be talking about the upcoming release of the ICH Reference Model, which is exciting for records management within clinical sites, because finally we'll actually have a structure that is standardized and that can be used across the board. At the end of the day today, we'll be having a panel discussion, which is led by Donna Dorozinski, who's the lead for the V4 initiative. And we'll be talking about everything V4, what's coming, and what the impact is. Tomorrow, we're talking about TMF evolution, and this will be kicked off by a really interesting talk from Joanne Malia from Regeneron, who will be talking about ICH E6R3 and the upcoming changes that we're going to see. So I would definitely go to that session if you haven't yet got to grips with ICH E6R3. We'll then hear from our very own Gianna De Robertis, our Director of Compliance, and Mike Zwedko, on data integrity within the TMF. And this is really a big topic as well, especially within the context of ICH E6R3. Aaron and Kristen from Just in Time will then be giving us some insights into AI and how it can play a role in oversight of TMFs. And then finally, we're going to have another panel at the end of the day tomorrow on ICH E6R3. With some great panelists who are going to give some insights into the impact that ICH E6R3 will have on the TMF. On Thursday, we're switching gears a little bit, and we're going to move into TMF culture and operations. We're going to get things off to a start with an interactive game show called Whose Job Is It Anyway? So that's going to be fun. So definitely go to that one. I think it's going to be really interesting. After that, my colleague Donatella and myself will be digging into the State of TMF Industry report that was recently published, and we'll be gathering some more insights from you guys as well. And then afterwards, we're going to hear from Anne-Noël from GSK and their approach to inspection readiness. So kind of a case study. And then finally, we've got an expert panel, which is being led by Dave Ives from Novartis, to talk about risk-based approach and what it all means. Now, our last day on Friday, so there's already a lot of stuff that we've gone through, but on Friday, we're going to be focusing on oversight. And this is what we're going to start to really dig into, because oversight obviously is really key. And Donatella will give us a talk on how we can embed quality into our TMF through integration with our quality management system. We'll then have Francisca, who will take a look at metrics and how we can maybe innovate or drive innovation through metrics. And the last presentation of the week will be by Katie Hoover on TMF Oversight Rescue, which I thought was quite an interesting title. Now we'll finish things up with a grand finale in the form of a trivia quiz, which will be hosted by the one and only Jamie Toth, where we've selected contestants who are going to test their TMF knowledge. I'm sure it's going to be very fun, so definitely come along to that, and maybe you'll learn a few things as well. And at the same time, we'll also be announcing the winners for the TMF Week Converse that you could win, and then also we'll be giving away a free ticket to the CDISC TMF Interchange Conference in Nashville in October, which is worth around $2,000, I believe. So definitely a great prize. So make sure you show up to that session to see if you've won the entrance to the conference. So as you can see, it's going to be a week that's really packed with a lot of knowledge and insights, and of course some fun. And I'm really looking forward to a lot of these presentations. I'd like to do a big shout out to our team behind the scenes who really worked hard to put this event together. Without them, we couldn't do it. And so thank you to the Montreal team for putting such a great group of speakers together to provide TMF Week 2025. And of course, thank you to our speakers who are giving their time and knowledge and really giving back to the community. So we appreciate you all, and with that, I'd like to wish you all a great TMF Week 2025. Now, after that big introduction, I just want to do a bit of housekeeping, and then I'm going to introduce our speakers. So all sessions will be recorded and available at the end of the conference. All attendees will receive a certificate of attendance for the entire TMF Week conference, not for each session. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation, so there's a little Q&A section. Please do write your questions in there, and then we'll take them at the end of the presentation. And also remember, there's a networking break after this session for 15 minutes, so go into the lounge and go and meet your colleagues, go and talk about what you've heard and anything else you'd like to chat about. Okay, in terms of our timeline, so we're going to present for around 30 minutes. We'll then have about 15 minutes or slightly less for Q&A. And then I'll introduce the next session and we'll go into the networking break. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dave Iverson-Hurst from CDISC, who's really the project owner for digital data flow and the USDM, and Nick Hargarden from Moderna, who's a steering committee member of the TMF Reference Model and is also very much involved in the initiative around V4 and alignment with digital data flow. So with that, I will pass it over to my colleagues and wish you a very interesting talk.
Thanks, Paul. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Get a thumbs up from our panelists, my fellow presenter, maybe there. And thanks, Paul, for inviting us along to this. I've been at the TMF Week before, and I think it's become really an incredible resource for the community. The sheer diversity, the presentations and themes that you're covering this week, as well as the amazing geographic spread of the attendees. Looking at the feed on the right-hand side of my screen, it's really impressive. So let me see if I can make these slides move forward. Go. Did introductions, so I will just add a little bit of color there. So with Dave, because he's not from the TMF community, but he is at the heart of CDISC. So Dave spent the last 25 years of his career in the pharmaceutical industry, taking his technology and software development experience into clinical trial process and data standards. And as Paul mentioned, key for us today is he's the CDISC product owner and the technical expert for the Digital Data Flow project, and as well as a partner at Data for Knowledge in Copenhagen. And I saw there was a couple of people from Copenhagen joined today, so a shout out to Denmark. So I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about the kind of background to this before Dave gets into the technical details of USDM and the digital data flow. The disclaimers and disclosures I think you've seen before, so I won't read through those, but I did want to quickly talk about what is ICH M11 for those of you who've not come across it. So it's you all know ICH. It's a multi-year project to develop a standard for protocol structure and content. So at its heart, it's a template for how a protocol should look and what it should contain, but it's actually a very rich one, and it includes a technical specification. So it's not just a list of like the required sections for a protocol, but it actually has kind of specific data fields and some of the formatting requirements. And so it's really moving us from every protocol being different to standard structure to something that could be perhaps operationalized from a technical standpoint to be consumed by systems more easily. So these are the outputs for those of you who want to go take a look. There's the main paper that talks about the project. You'll sometimes see it called C#, which is Clinical Electronic Structured Harmonized Protocol. There's the M11 template, and then the technical specification I mentioned. And so I think I've got an example here. So this is what the in the tech spec, or the ECG piece looks like. So you can see here it really does kind of go into quite a lot of detail. It's telling you it should be text for data type and what kind of is it data, is it a value, or is it a heading, etc. There's even some relationships to other pieces. So it kind of takes, you're in this section, what does that relate back to, and it shows you for the table of contents and so on. So yeah, pretty detailed, which kind of then leads to the question, so what is USDM and why do we need it? So whilst that technical specification takes us so far, what USDM will do is, and David obviously will talk about this more, is to create a fully functional technical design of this. So the idea is to give software designers from pharma and vendors and CROs something they can use to build new applications that allows them to make them interoperable, right? So that data can be seamlessly moved between applications. And that's the core idea that came behind the digital data flow, is you could get the data out of a protocol and feed it downstream systems. So M11 doesn't give us everything. It doesn't give us control terminology. There's a lot of the information we need is already in standards at CDISC. So this is one of the reasons why CDISC was such a perfect choice to move this forward and operationalize it. We can now connect to existing standards. We're going to need somebody to maintain this. So you can't just build it and leave it. And so whilst ICH has built us that standard protocol, we need somebody to kind of maintain this technical design. And then the last piece is just to say, as I say, it's about interoperability, and that's kind of core to what we might start thinking about with TMF, is getting that protocol information and sharing it between systems. You need a way to do that, and that's the API, the application programming interface, which is another output of the effort. So this is I'm going to hand over to Dave to kind of go a bit more into the weeds of the USDM and where we are today in this project. It's been going for quite a while already. So, and hopefully give you, by visualizing some of this, give you some concrete idea of what this looks like. It is technical, it is different for us, but I do think that it's really a great opportunity for many of us to kind of, understand this and understand where we could take TMF and TMF management in the future by leveraging this effort. So that I will hand over to Dave.
Thanks, Nick. Hopefully you can hear me. I'll look for a thumbs up from somebody, and I'll advance the slides on a whole new platform here for the first time, so I'm trying not to get things wrong. DDF, digital data flow. It is a combined effort from Transcelerate and CDISC. So it's a Transcelerate project initially, this idea of digital data flow, this end-to-end idea. But it's really its first sort of manifestation in something real is USDM, Unified Study Definitions Model. This is a standard developed by CDISC at the behest of Transcelerate. So Transcelerate have come along, partnered with CDISC, and say, what we need is a model. And what we need is a model of, and in very simplistic terms, protocol. So if you look at this slide I like. It just gives the big picture. Left-hand side, this is where we are today. We write a protocol, it's a document. It's a Word document, it gets put into PDF. We then all of us take it, we use it in some way, shape or form. We read a paragraph, we look at the SOA, we take the inclusion, exclusion, we use it in various ways. And we put it into another system, EDC, CTMS, you can see that on the left-hand side. And of course, every time we do that, there's the potential for just transcription errors or getting it wrong. There's also the chance of interpreting the document wrong, because protocols aren't the simplest thing, and they're only getting more complex as time goes by. We get complex study designs. So the idea is the right-hand side. What we want is an electronic version of that document. This is what USDM is essentially about. It's an electronic version of the protocol. It's actually slightly wider, and this unified study definition gives you the clue. It's actually a study definition, which is the protocol plus some more stuff, and we'll see about that later on. But the idea is that it's electronic. So instead of you having to read it and then type it into another system, put it into Excel, you can get it electronically to put it into whatever system you want, and therefore use it, therefore reducing the chances of, taking out the probability of transcription errors, but also interpretation. And that's what we're trying to get to with the model, is that we want the interpretation of the document, the design, the definition of the study to be consistent across all our systems. So that's the big picture. And we've spent, as Nick said, it's been going for quite a while. It started sort of mid 2021, so it's been running for 3 or 4 years now. But we have USDM, the USDM Standard, Unified Study Definitions Model. We have just last week we released version 4, and this is go and use it, please time. It's now available. It won't be perfect, of course, because there's always chances there's 1 or 2 things we might need to tweak in the future, but this is pretty stable. It's gone through a lot of checking and use and all the rest of it. 6 pieces to this standard. Left-hand side, logical model, combined with the CDISC control terminology. This is the backbone. This is the key pieces of the standard. This gives you classes, relationships, and all definitions for all the pieces which go in that logical model. When you pick up a document, you look at a table, objectives, endpoints. Your brain goes into overdrive. It starts building a little mini model, even if you don't realize it, in your brain. Oh, this objective's got 2 endpoints. This objective's related to those endpoints. The table structure and everything, but your brain is doing that. Unfortunately, we're not telling the machine. This is what USDM tries to do. It tries to organize it with all the correct relationships and all the rest of it. So it's putting structure around what we see in a document and organizing it, putting things in the right pigeonholes. So that's the model, that's the control terminology. We need the control terminology, and you'll see a slide in a minute as to why we need control terminology. Then we have as Nick said, we want to be able to send it from point A to B. So we have the API specification. So if we fill the model with content, i.e. a study definition, which contains a protocol, we can transmit it from system to system. And we have an API using JSON for that purpose. Then we have the core rules, and this is a standard CDISC mechanism. We use it for SDTM and various other standards, but it allows us to run a series of rules across the content of the model. So you put a given protocol into the model. It allows you to run a series of rules to check the consistency and this sort of thing. Have you used the right terminology in the right field, or have you put some unknown value in there which is invalid? All these sort of things. So it can run across the model content and check that you've used it correctly to a pretty good extent. Then we have examples, and we have an implementation guide in there to help you use the model. The model, the thing is, it is a model, and it would be used, as Nick said, by software developers to implement systems. You should really never see the model. You should see a system and a user interface which implements the model. But the model gives you a lot of power. It's a standardized way of doing a lot of what we do today across clinical research. You'd love my desk at the moment. It's got more pieces of paper of things I'm trying to remember to say that I forgot probably the first time I did this for Nick and Paul when we were in Geneva. So there's more pieces of paper on my desk than I really should have. But this picture I drew specifically for Geneva, and I didn't show it in the TMF bit, but I think it's quite an important one. Left-hand side, template spec. And there's a little snippet I've taken from the template spec, the ICH M11 template spec. It's just the title page. And if you can see, you can just see trial phase, short title lurking there. And this is what M11 is telling us that they want to see on the title page of an M11 protocol document. But what they've got in trial phase, and I've sort of blown it up a bit, is those square brackets trial phase. And what that says is the convention they use in the document is, if it's in square brackets, it's a code list. In the technical spec, they then tell us what that valid code list is. So in the technical spec, bottom middle, you'll see there's a whole code list, phase 1, phase 2, phase 1b, phase, the various values that we can have for phase. And one of those codes is phase 1. And it's a CDISC code, so it's NCI Thesaurus C15600. This is the same codes that we use in SDTM, for instance. So we've got that nice compatibility already emerging. What USDM does is say, well, hold on a minute, study phase. I know on the document it's on the title page, but how does it relate to study? How does it relate to study design? How does it relate to inclusion or exclusion? So the model is there to put that piece of information in the right place and relate it to all the other pieces in the correct manner. So there's an attribute, study phase. It has an alias code, and there can be 0 or 1 of them. That's the model doing its job. Why is it an alias code? Well, what we've allowed for is the fact we want one standard code, C15600, or all the other C codes. But we also allow for sort of legacy reasons, this sort of thing, the ability to put synonym codes in there. So we have one standard code and N synonyms. For instance, a sponsor may have an existing code list for phase which they want to maintain, but also use the standard M11 code. So they could put both codes in the right place. So we populate our model, we have a phase 1. And now, because it's all standardized, we have a standardized model. We know where everything goes on the title page. We have the M11 spec, we have USDM. Piece of software can output that content in the right format, and that's what you see on the right-hand side. Trial phase, phase 1. This is an example output from M11 and USDM working together, and we get our. So suddenly what we start to see is our documents, our protocol documents, looking the same. And they're organized the same inside of a machine. We start to get standard protocol, standard study definitions. So it becomes pretty nice. That then gives us, oops, I have to press the mouse button. Sorry, I was using my keyboard. That then gives us a lot of power, and the use cases for an electronic protocol is large. And this is something I put together a lot, getting on for almost a year ago, just to give a flavor of the use cases that we're being. QR code, you can click on it, you can download it. It's quite a big picture, but it's an example set of use cases where this protocol might hit. If you think about where we pick up a protocol today, be it a paper document, be it a PDF, and we extract some information from it, that's a use case. And there are tens of those across the pharma enterprise. But there's retrospective and there's prospective. Retrospective is we could store a whole series of old protocols to inform writing new protocols, writing them better, reducing the number of amendments, this type of thing. So we want to learn standardized library of inclusion, exclusion, and this sort of thing. USDM doesn't say that you must use this inclusion, doesn't say you must use that inclusion or exclusion criteria. It has the positions, the slots for those, but it doesn't say you have to use the particular text. That's for the company to decide what they want within a therapeutic area, all that sort of thing. But a large number of use cases. And this graphic, just gives you a flavor of those. And of course, TMF. And I'm not a TMF expert. This is, I have never worked on TMF or anything like that, but we know that there's a link here, and this is what Paul and Nick and, I think TMF version 4 is about, taking that first step towards, linking these things up, because there is a connection there. But TMF is obviously, one use case of many of an electronic protocol. We've been working with ICH quite closely. CDISC have signed a memorandum with ICH to manage the terminology for ICH M11, and we've used the same terminology within USDM, so they're already nicely compatible. Obviously, it would make great sense for those then to be used down the stream. Those terminology are also compatible with SDTM, for instance, and things like this, other submission artifacts. 2022, I've got another piece of paper down here, October, just to remind me. October 2022 was the initial draft came out of ICH M11. It went for public review. There were a large number of comments. It wasn't quite 10,000, but it was getting close from what I understand. Took a long time to process those comments. They re-released the specs this March. They didn't, and they put the technical spec out for comment, but not the template. The template is now pretty much frozen. We will see a new version, hopefully by the end of this year. Probably November is the scheduled time it should come out, where we see a finalized version of ICH M11, and that will be a big step forward. We will do a point release on USDM just to tweak anything to make sure that the two standards perfectly align. We don't believe there will be many changes from what we're hearing already, but we will just make sure that everything aligns. If they change the terminology or something like that, we'll make sure everything's consistent. What we get as well with USDM is we get this notion of structured and unstructured. And on the left-hand side, you see a notion of structured information, and on the left-hand and the right-hand side, getting my left and right confused there, right-hand side, you've got unstructured. The left-hand side is the title page, which we saw for phase just a minute ago, but and this is the first part of it. The first field is sponsor confidentiality statement. In blue, optional. Again, M11 convention, the way they've written the spec. Next field, black, required, full title. So this is the protocol full title. These are things we obviously want to be able to search on in the future. We want to store because we're going to look at them. They're going to be used in other places. Is it an original protocol sponsor protocol identifier? Obviously going to be used many times across the enterprise. Version number, which amendment is it? This is all information we need to have instantly available to other systems. So we want to structure those fields. We're not going to split them down any further, but they're atomic data items. So they're structured, and we put those into the model in specific places. On the right-hand side, we have the unstructured information. And these are really blobs of text. And I'm trying to see it on the screen because my eyes aren't very good. I'm getting an old man. Emergency unblinding at the site, 674. That's that first one at the top. It's it could be a paragraph. It could be two paragraphs. It could be a few paragraphs in a table. But we're just going to store it as it's, as the narrative form. As it was written. We're not going to try split it up into any clever ways. So we structure and unstructure various pieces of the protocol so that we can pick them out. Inclusion, exclusion get structured, objectives and endpoints get structured. Schedule activities we're structuring. So that the important pieces we're structuring, and then we have bits of text so we can recreate the document as a whole. And this delightful thing, again, another barcode, and you won't be able to read it, but it's a big infographic, and you can zoom in and you'll be able to see the M11 spec in the background, and you'll be able to see USDM. But it's here to give you just a feel. I did it to give you people a feeling of how M11 and USDM relate. And what you'll see around the outside is all the pages of the M11 template spec. Starting page 1, 12 o'clock, going clockwise, page 2, page 3, blah, 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 blah. And then color-coded each element that you've just seen on the previous slide, color-coded and then color-coded on the model to show roughly where it goes. Two things to notice. Well, actually three things, because I'm getting it all wrong. Most of the structuring is at the front of the M11 document. So title page, inclusion, exclusion, objectives, endpoints, amendments, this sort of stuff. That tends to appear at the front of the document. The grey bit you see across the bottom left is all the sort of pages which have just got sections of text, narrative form. We tend to go around the document, lots of narrative in the middle of the document, and at the very end we get more amendment information, all the previous amendments, and again we structure that. But what you'll notice is the one other thing I like to point out is that big blue section in the middle of the circle, bottom right-hand side of the USDM model. This is the schedule of activities, and we put a lot of effort into digitizing the schedule of activities because that's what gives us a lot of power in downstream systems, EDC, for instance. It gives us all the specificity of what the design is really about, all the data that needs to be collected, all this sort of stuff. But if you note down the right-hand side, there is a page, just look, it's the bottom right, And it's just a little blue, you'll be able to see just a little blue blob, and that's where M11 says, and the schedule of activities goes here. M11 is very much a document perspective. It doesn't detail what an SOA is, how it's structured, what it should look like, because we all know that SOAs across sponsors vary so much. We get a lot of information in the SOA. I'm going to speed up because I'm being told I've just had a little red bar come across the top going, speed up, 14 minutes to go. That is USDM, that is M11. M11, a document, we can digitize it so that you can use it in whatever system you need consistently. That's what we're trying to get to, without error, and understand the protocol more quickly. Your system can understand the design more quickly and utilize that design more quickly. Just going to finish off a couple of minutes just showing you some visual examples of it being used, so you can, it's real. This is just 5 protocols stored as M11 USDM. So M11 protocols stored in USDM in a system. And what we've done is taken out the title page and just displayed them side by side so we can compare and contrast. But because we have all the structured information inside of the system, we can pick and choose. I could pick out all the phase 2 studies. I can show them side by side. We can display it and cut and dice it in whatever way we want. We can display it back as a document, highly useful. There you see the title page again. The very top bit with the clinical C# M11 template example wouldn't normally appear in an M11 document, if I could say it properly. It would normally start with that bit where you see full title and go down. That was put up for some demonstration work we were doing. But obviously you can recreate the protocol document, and obviously that's an important thing. This is a dashboard we did in conjunction with the FDA and Precision FDA environment, the PRISM environment. People at the FDA wanted to see the document just displayed in various ways and cut it up so they could get a quick overview of the study design. So they wanted to see the overall design parameters and the trial schema side by side, the objectives and endpoints, together. So we can cut that up. SOA. We've done some work on, just transmitting the SOA using some FHIR implementation. So this is the SOA from USDM displayed as part of USDM demonstration. And then this is it being received by another system and displayed. You can see the rendition is subtly different, but it's the same information. It's the same design transmitted from point A to point B. So this could be, an EDC system receiving it and using it for setting up an EDC system, for example. So that is USDM, few examples, how it could relate to TMF, very quick overview. I will ask Nick to return and see if there are any questions for you folks. Oh, there's a few questions. It's always good.
That was great. Thanks, guys. So let me just dig into the questions.
And I do hope that I tried not to make it technical as the last version myself and Nick did when we were in Geneva. Because there were 1 or 2 blank faces when I was leaving the room, and it's always it's my first foray into the TMF world, so I'm learning.
And So, sorry, reading through the questions at the same time, actually. So there's a question that says, how exactly will M11 affect TMF maintenance? So I think by this, what's meant is how will it affect things like completeness, and then ensuring that the TMF is complete. So Nick, I don't know.
I can take a stab at it immediately. So I think that's, to me, I think that's kind of downstream. It's not going to change anything tomorrow, but maybe bringing that, there's a separate question there that's sort of kind of related about, does the next version of the reference model bring us in line with USDM? It's more like starting a journey, as Dave mentioned earlier. By coming into CDISC and with the next version of our reference model, we're going to start to align with how CDISC manages standards and make sure that we're aligned with existing ones and USDM. So it's a beginning. And then I think downstream, what we hope to see is the digital protocol will allow us, Dave said this several times, it's this idea of being able to kind of consume the data directly into a system. So let's think about how that could power the TMF's configuration, right? Most of us use quite a standard templates for EDLs and other tools like that to measure completeness and our metrics. But every trial has its own characteristics, and some of us work in very diverse, different kinds of indications, which means that the trial deliverables are very different, particularly at sites. So I think that's where we may see it. It'll allow us to really kind of superpower how we manage and predict what we should be seeing and when, because we're getting the systems in the future will be able to be configured directly from the protocol. And Paul, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts on those questions.
So I think there's another sort of, I mean, obviously in the future, we're going to have to be able to host digital protocols within our TMF. So that's definitely a consideration, but I think it's also an opportunity because we could also imagine that we would be able to navigate the TMF by digital protocol. So for example, if I'm looking at a very specific section of the protocol, let's say the randomization section, I should be able to then see all of the records that I have that relate to that particular area. So it makes it a lot easier for us to be able to understand, well, what is the protocol saying in terms of what I should be doing for that particular area? And then, what are the records that demonstrate that I did what the protocol said I was meant to be doing? So it's kind of having those two things mapped together is very, very useful. And then I think, as you mentioned, Nick, the fact that we have all of the systems, all of the upstream and downstream systems within clinical, aligning with the same language, aligning with the same standard like USDM is very important for us as well, because obviously a lot of the TMF exists within other systems. It's things that we create, records that we create in other systems, and so we need to be able to more easily connect to those systems to be able to access those records and also understand whether they exist or not. And so I think that that's also something that eventually digital data flow and USDM will give us. It will give us that ability to much more easily connect with those systems and access those records, access the data contained within, and sort of present a much more holistic view on the TMF across systems, not just within our eTMF system itself.
Paul, can I just jump? Somebody asked about where the official information is. I've just put a couple of links in the chat for people if they want to get to the official GitHub and a few other things.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. And definitely go and start to look at it. And, as you saw from the images that Dave presented, it's quite big. But I think, as you start to look at it, it will start to make sense, especially the USDM model. Just looking about other sessions. So there's one question here. Does M11 have the capability to be translated? Is there a code in the data input? I'm not sure.
Yeah, this has come up a few times. The internationalization, shall we use that expression? I don't think there's been much done on that, but I think obviously ICH, Japanese regulator, is there, Chinese regulator is there, so they are going to want it, in their own language and this sort of thing. I think their work will be done there. We don't have support for it in the model at the moment, but it wouldn't take as much to do it. The narrative could quite happily handle, non-English forms without any hassle.
Yeah.
So it will probably be, the intention from USDM perspective is we would do a 4.1 release, probably February, March, April, sometime around there, 2026, to accommodate M11 and the final version, the first public version, formal version, the V1. And then there will be a version 5, probably 2 years' time from now, with a whole series of upgrades based on the learnings that we're going to get over the coming, year, 18 months. And I think internationalization will be one of those.
Great. There's another really interesting question from Olivier Petit. Is USDM dimensions to support complex, huge, real-world evidence generation studies? Have you guys started to look at RWE?
Yeah, it will support. We have got observational study support in there. It does support complex design, so it's one to many study. So one study to many to study designs. To allow for the sort of complex umbrella type arrangement. It does support observational studies. Depending exactly what is meant by complex and huge, I'm going to go put my hand on my heart and go, I hope so. I can't think of anything that would prevent it, because the huge would be the amount of data you're collecting, and obviously that's not so much of a problem for the actual design side of things. Complex would be the design thing. We hopefully have enough support, but you never know. Proof of the pudding is in the eating. That's what that's where we need to stretch the envelope and stress it and prove those things. But it would be nice to see people trying to see whether it would.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also a few questions around training. So are there resources available or trainings available to learn more about USDM?
Yes. There is a sort of a technical training course at the moment, and CDISC are working on starting to think about sort of higher level, more businessy training. So you can certainly get a one-day training course, and Nick has attended one of the sessions, I believe, in Phoenix. We did. So where you can get into the technical detail and the weeds. Other people just want to be able to, what can I do with it, rather than how does it do it? And that work is ongoing at the moment to sort of build those training courses.
Yeah, I can say for the, if you're able to get to the interchange in Nashville, I think when I did that, and I know there was a TMF a system admin asking this question, it was a lot of fun. So to press the buttons and see this thing operate and generate the outputs was actually a really interesting session to attend. So, and it really helps for me. It really helped me make the thing make sense to see it in operation. So, highly recommend it.
And I think as we sort of move closer towards V4, and as we sort of start to work on, for example, aligning our metadata standard with USDM, we'll also start to think about trainings that we will give that are specific to the TMF community as well. So there will be TMF specific things that come out, but it's more likely to be in, I would say, 2026 than this year. But watch this space. All right, we are getting very close to the end of our time. And so I think we're going to, unfortunately, have to wrap up. But thank you guys for giving such a great session. I think it was a really good way to start our day on standards, as I think this is very fundamental to a lot of the things that we're going to be doing in the future. So thank you both to Dave and Nick for speaking to us today. So the next session, so I'm actually introducing myself, so I'll be talking about the future of the CDISC TMF reference model, so the vision and the roadmap that we've put together. So definitely join us for that at 10 a.m. Eastern. So that's 4 p.m. Central European time. And in the meantime, it's time for a networking break. So do head towards the lounge if you want to meet with your fellow TMFers and catch up or discuss everything that you've just heard about M11 and USDM and digital data flow. So with that, I will close this session, and thank you once again, Dave and Nick, for such a great interactive session.
Thank you.